Welcome. This is Marnie, and I'm here today with our guest, Jenna Schutt. We're going to be talking about turning your testimony into teachable content. You want to grab a pen or notepad right now because we're going to be covering exactly why your testimony may not be connected yet and how to make it more useful to your audiences. 3 questions that help you find the message inside your hardest season, why emotional stories need a clear takeaway, and how to give your audience one of those. 5 ways to turn a personal story into practical teaching points people can actually apply. Why vulnerability without direction can overwhelm your audience. How to share the hard things with hope and purpose, and why you must not share every detail of your story, but what to include instead. She's also going to talk about 3 ways to turn repeated lessons from your life into signature phrases, speaking topics, or content ideas, and how to identify places your testimony can become teachable content, including podcasts, posts, devotionals, workshops, and keynotes. Our guest today is Jenna Schutt. She is a former cardiac RN, stem cell transplant survivor, writer, speaker, wife, and mom who helps women train joy as a reflex. You can learn more about her over at jennaschutt.com and invite her to speak via womenspeakers.com. Welcome to you, Jenna. Great to have you here.
Hi, I'm so glad to be here. I think it's going to be a wonderful time.
Yeah, we have got so much ground to cover.
Yes.
Before we get going, I just want you to just give us the really capsulated place that gives you the authority to talk about sharing a testimony that's hard.
Yes, absolutely. I'll try to make it quick here. So 7 years ago, I was diagnosed with a very rare, incurable bone marrow disease. And during that time, I had 2 babies in diapers. And over the last 7 years, I have walked through over 8 rounds of IV chemotherapy, oral chemotherapy, again, IV chemotherapy, and then a stem cell transplant. Throughout that time, I had many complications like a blood clot. I had fluid in my lung. I had many, many things that happened during that time. And now I'm on the other side of it. I am in survivorship, and I really speak a lot for my testimony about how the Lord walked me through those difficult moments and how he showed me how to choose faith, peace, and joy during life's hardest moments, and how other women can train themselves to do that too.
I love that. And I want to just dive right in here. Thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you for what I've noticed at womenspeakers.com is a lot of times the women that God gives platforms to are the women that have the really hard stories. And the reason for that is because if somebody just gets up and their life has just been perfect in storybook, it's real hard to relate to them when we're in our own seasons of challenge. And when we come to an audience being vulnerable about the difficult places that God has led us through, it changes how women are able to receive us, but more importantly, how they're able to receive Jesus. Yeah. And so that's the goal. So, all right. So the first thing we want to talk about is maybe why your testimony isn't connecting and how to make it more relatable.
Yes. Well, I think a lot of times people with testimonies, even the most powerful testimony in the world, they want to talk about the events of their story, but sometimes they tend to leave out the message inside of the story. Mm-hmm. And so a testimony can really move people emotionally, but if we don't walk them through and help them understand what God taught us in that time and through that time, so that they can be empowered and inspired for their own life, then we're not really helping them see how it is applicable to them. And if they don't walk away with something that they can say, I can do this myself, I can apply this to my life, then we are just telling them a story. And they don't want a story. They want their life to be changed by what you are saying.
Yeah. There's a place for just stories, yeah. But if you want to be impactful and have them take away something they can apply, then you have to take it to that next level there. So there's 3 questions that you teach that help us find our message inside the hardest seasons.
Yes. So the biggest 3 questions that you want to ask is, what is your story? So what is your hard? What is the thing that you went through that you can share with other people? And the second thing is, what did you learn? What is it that you learned that God brought you through that way And then how did he bring you through that? And then the third question is, what is the listener going to take away? So it is wonderful to have a story. It is wonderful to learn something. But then what does the listener going to actually take from your story, from what you learned, and be able to apply it to their own life? Because for me, a lot of the issues that I had was a medical issue. But if I only speak to people that have a medical issue, that makes the group of people that I'm speaking to can make it very small, especially stem cell transplant survivors. There may not be a ton of them around, and rare disease survivors, because my disease is that I've been dealing with. I don't say it's my disease, but the one that I've been dealing with, even Mayo Clinic says that they only see a few of it a year. So if I try to only go towards those people, I am really limiting my audience. But if I reach out and say, this was my hard, this is what I dealt with, but maybe you're dealing with XYZ, then we've just opened it up to all of these other people. So what is your story? What did God teach you in that story? And what is your listener going to get out of your story? How are they going to walk it out themselves?
Yeah, I love that. Kind of leads into the next thing. Emotional stories need a clear takeaway. Otherwise, like you said, they're just an emotional story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. So when I started writing my forthcoming book, I really saw it as a memoir, just sharing my story, just telling my story. And as I was getting further and further along with that, I saw that I wasn't just telling my story. I was teaching how people could take what I did and put it into their own life. And so when you think about a testimony or a story or things like that, it's meant to walk people through everything that happened. But the more helpful question is, what did God form in me that can strengthen someone else? And emotion is great. It's great to have emotion. But if the only emotion that you are pulling out of those people is compassion and empathy for your story, it's not going to move them to do their own actions, to take your whatever it is, your framework or your step program or your coaching, whatever that thing is that you're trying to get across to them. If they only feel compassion for you, empathy for you, they're sad for what you went through, but they don't feel that fire inside of them that says, oh, I see what God did and God can do that for me too, then what is your audience going to walk away from, and what are they going to take with them and take to their churches and say, we have to have her. She's got to come back. I want our church to hear that. I want this group to hear that, and get your message spread further out into those people who need to hear it.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about this a little bit more too as we go on. But the danger of just leaving them with the emotional story is that you actually now have passed your emotional baggage onto them without giving them an outlet to move past it. So you felt like you were healed enough to share this with them, but now they have to heal because they heard it.
Yes.
Right.
Absolutely.
And so you totally don't want to leave them there. You want to move them forward. I love that. And there's 5 ways to turn a personal story into practical teaching points. So can you just start with the first 1 or 2?
Yes. So I think the first one, when you're talking about turning your own story, your own testimony into a teaching point, is, what did God do for you and how did he do it? Yeah. So when you're looking at that, maybe it is that, for my instance, he showed me how to have joy, and he used Bible verses like, the joy of the Lord is my strength, or I'm strong in the Lord and the power of his might. So what is it that God did, and how did he do it? What Bible verses did he use? Because I always think it's so important, like you said at the beginning of this message, that we are taking our stories and we're turning the eyes to Jesus. That's the whole point. That's our whole message. So how do you take that personal story and turning into practical teaching? Turn it to Jesus. Always go back to Jesus. Always go back to his word. What was it that it was in his word that made your story a testimony now? So that's the one thing I would say, and that's going to be the most important thing, is always using your story to point to Jesus. That's where we want people to go.
Yeah.
That's where we have to have people to go. And then number 2, I would say to figure out what that framework is that helped you. So, okay, this is my story. This is what God showed me. And then how?
Yeah.
How do we do that? And make it, so that would be number 2 is figure it out. What's your framework? Write down your framework. And number 3 is make it easy. Yeah. Don't make it hard. Don't make it complicated. I'm a nurse, so I have all of these nursey type medical jargon things that I could start pulling out, like neuroplasticity and cardio infarction and all these words. And those sound great, but unless you're in the medical world, that's not going to be your language. So take that message that God put in your heart, what he showed you, make it a framework and make it easy. Don't make it complicated.
Will you forget number 4 and 5 if I interrupt you right here?
I will not.
Okay. Okay. Good. Because what I was thinking is there's such a big difference between experiencing something, experiencing change through something, and being able to communicate it.
Yes. And I like
that's where the work is.
That there's a big difference between knowledge faith and practiced faith.
Yes. Yes.
So it's wonderful to know the things, to know what God did for you, to know what you would like to share with people. But there's a whole nother thing of getting people to understand how to do that. Yeah. And I like to call things like choose joy, faith over fear. Those are wonderful, wonderful words. But I also like to call them kind of like bumper sticker faith because they look great on a bumper sticker. But how do you get to
how do you do it?
How do I do it? And that's what people are looking for. So I'd say that would be number 4 is what is your listener going to get? What are they getting from you? Are they going to get that framework from your message? So make sure that when you know your story, you have your framework, you know how God used that story to get to where you are. You have your framework, you've made it easy, and then make sure they get it. Make sure they get that framework. Yeah. And that could be different things. So I know that I like to use lead magnets and funnels and all those things to get people to my subscriber list so that they can continually hear from me. So it's not just a one and then it's over. You speak and then you don't ever hear from them again. You don't ever speak them again.
Right.
So I like to give things that are going to help them past just what I'm speaking.
Right.
So that speaking could be 45 minutes, but they need it tomorrow too. They need it the day after that too. Yep. So how are they going to get from what you said to the next week?
Right. Yeah, I love that. And be sure that what you're giving away in your talks, in whatever, is super valuable. Don't hold back the good stuff. You want to actually give them really great content. Dr. Sandra Dalton Smith was in our speaker training webinar earlier this week, and she was saying about how when she gives away, I mean, she just gives away amazing like roadmaps and it's just strategies for her people. But she said that what she hears is people will say things like, wow, if this was the freebie, I can't wait to dig into the program, right? And we have a tendency to want to hold back, but don't hold back. Share freely. We want to talk about vulnerability here. And again, I want to start, and then I'm going to pass it to you, but I want to start by just saying that what I always teach is when you have an extreme wound in your life, something that's been very painful for you, whether it's a physical illness, a betrayal, whatever it is, you should not take a platform. You should not write a book until that area of your life is literally scarred over. When you stand up in front of a group of people, when you write a book, you really are just, and I had somebody say this to me about worship team. When you're up there on the worship team, just you stand up naked and bare, and you're just like, have your arms out. Like if you want to throw an arrow, here I am. Because that was what the worship teams in the Bible did. They went out first in front of the warriors. They went out with the music, with the worship. And if they were going to get hit by an arrow, they just knew if God isn't with me, I'm dead. I don't have a weapon. I'm dead. So as a speaker, as an author, as a worship leader, when you stand in front of people, you want your wounds scarred over. So the premise here is that you have regular skin that is just so thick, but when you have a scar, it's actually tougher than your other skin. It's actually more able to take a direct hit than the rest of you is. So God has made this principle for us where we don't share from our vulnerability while we are still gaping, oozing, bleeding. Don't share at that point publicly. Share at that point in small, trusted groups. Wait to share from platforms, from open it to the public. Wait until you're healed up, and then bring your message to the world. Now I want to pass it to you because I know you've got good stuff here too.
Well, I think why vulnerability without direction can be overwhelming is if you are standing on stage and you're talking about something that, like you said, is not healed yet, and you start crying and you start becoming overly emotional and you kind of turn into a hot mess express up there, when you're trying to teach them that God got you through it, you're kind of just showing them the reverse of what you're trying to do. And so it limits that credibility that you just are trying to bring them, because, you know, being vulnerable, there's a certain amount that you can obviously do. You need to be vulnerable to a point where you're sharing your story, even though sometimes it's difficult to speak about those things. But if your wound is so raw and fresh and not healed that you cannot speak about it without becoming overly emotional, you're really not going to help your audience. All you're going to do is, again, make them feel sorry for you, but they're not going to leave with that empowerment that they can get the victory, because they don't see victory in you. And if they don't see victory in you, why would they believe that they can get it for themselves?
Yeah, so I want to just hunker down on this for just a few more minutes, because it's perfectly acceptable for you to shed tears from the platform.
Yes.
Nothing wrong with that.
No.
All of us have done it. All of us will do it. That is completely, let the Holy Spirit do that. What we're talking about here is when you are not yet healed enough to be up there presenting. And in that situation, back to what I said earlier, not only have you just shared your story without leaving them with any actionable, joyous expression at the end for themselves, but you have literally passed your pain to them. That's what you've actually done. You've used the platform to pass your pain to your audience, and that is not what we are called to do.
Exactly. We're not saying don't be emotional, because you definitely have to show people that you care about them. This thing that you went through was very real. It was very difficult. And it is very true. You don't want to get up there and look like you're lying to the audience, because they will feel that distrust. They will know that you are not being honest. They can just feel that. So you definitely want to be to a place where you are open and honest with them and allow them to see kind of behind the curtain. But there's a big difference between that and you not being able to even speak anymore because you're so emotional. And if you get to that place, you really just don't look like victorious. You don't look like the framework that you're trying to teach them worked. And in order for them to want to know more, you're going to have to show them that what you're teaching them worked for you. Because if it didn't work for you, they're not going to think it can work for them.
And again, now I just want to make sure that you're hearing us. There is nothing wrong with going through a season. I mean, just read the Psalms. There's nothing wrong with going through seasons where you are really struggling, where life is so very painful, confusing. All of us are going to have those. What we're just talking about here is taking it to a platform at that level.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's not the time to take it to the platform.
Absolutely. I can tell you from personal experience that I have been through the ringer with just about anything that you can think of having thrown at me. I had thrown at me, but that was not, when I was in the middle of IV chemotherapy, was not the time for me to go up on stage and try to start talking to people, because I wasn't at a place that was good for me to be able to share.
Right.
Now, I still had to go through all the things that I went through. I still had to do all the things in the natural. I still had to get better and stronger. And now I know by that inward witness, I know by following that inside, that now is a time when I can go and speak and pour out of my cup, because my cup is more full now, because you can't give out of an empty cup. And if you have all these really hard things that you're dealing with, you've got to fill your cup so that you're able to give out. And that's okay.
Yeah. I want to not leave this quite yet. And I think that because this is really challenging. So what I want to make sure you hear, guys, is that when you're in the stage of chemo, when you're in the stage of husband just left, whatever, when you're in the depths, God is still going to use you there.
Yes.
You have people that are coming through your life
Yeah.
that are walking that part of the journey with you, watching you faithfully hold on to God, hold on to your faith through the darkest of valleys.
Yes.
And we're not diminishing that here at all.
No,
That's
you are
the part of
walking
your
the
season.
walk, and you are being the light right where
Yeah.
you are.
Yes.
It just may not be in the spotlight on the stage right that
Right.
minute. But you are still being the light. People are still
Yeah.
seeing you. They're still learning from you. They are still getting from you.
Yeah.
And that is not diminished in any shape or form.
Not at all.
It just may not be the time for the spotlight right that minute. May not be time for the stage right that minute. But that doesn't mean that time's not coming, or that time is not there for you. It just may not be right this second. You're dealing with other things, and you are in the season that you're in, and there are times and seasons for everything.
Yeah, keep that word in your mind. Seasons. There's seasons.
Seasons.
Okay. 3 ways to turn repeated lessons from your life into signature phrases, speaking topics, or content ideas.
Yes. So one of the things that I talk about a lot is I talk about joy. That is something that I lived through, and I lived in all these difficult circumstances in joy. So one of the things that I did to make these repeated lessons is take the things that are part of your framework. So if you have a 3-part framework, or a 4-part, or a 5-part, or a 10-part, whatever that is, you want to be teaching from part of that framework so that they are getting that from you. Now, as Marnie said, you're not going to give it all away, but you have to give enough value to them that they see that, yes, this is something that I want to continue to learn about. I need to know more from her, and I can tell that this is just the tip of the iceberg of what she has to give. So some different ways that you can do that is you can go on to podcasts, you can do reels, you can do all these different things. You can do posts, you can do blogs, you can do shared content, you can collaborate with other people. There are so many ways that you can turn these lessons into different things. And as far as signature phrases, it is really important to have something that someone recognizes you for. So when they look at you, like, I want them to say, that's the joy girl. That's the joy reflex girl. That's a girl that talks about joy in hard places. And how is that? How do they know that? It's because I am constantly putting that out into my content. So it is not just one time that they're going to see that, and the rest of my content for the rest of the week doesn't have anything that's related to that. It is always a part of my content. I'm pulling people into the same message that I am teaching. I'm going to pull people in no matter what it is, even if it's something funny, because a lot of that social media content, sometimes it's really funny, but you can still always pull something in there. Like, I know this is a humorous post today, but I just wanted to remind you that God loves you and God wants you to be joyful, even in all things. And boom, I have just pulled my message right into the funny post. And so that is the things that you can do. And as far as speaking topics, it's very similar. So use that framework. You're going to use what it is that you're teaching, what it is you're trying to get to your listener as your topics. So you don't want, like, I'm a former nurse and I went through stem cell transplant. I've never been through divorce. I'm not going to go try to speak on divorce, right? Because that's not my thing to talk about. Now, some people, they have experienced divorce, they have experienced relationship issues. And so that's what their speaking topics are going to be on. But I'm not going to try to pull from that just because I might get more viewers, because that's not authentic to me. And they're going to know that, and they're going to see right through that.
Yeah. No, I love that. Yeah. Stay in your lane. God has put you here with specific things for you to share. Yes. And you don't have to worry about what you're not sharing. Just share what God puts in your heart to share. So what are some ways to identify places that your testimony can become teachable content?
I think some of the ways that you can identify it is if it taught you something.
Yeah.
So if it is something that taught you something, then it's something that can teach somebody else something. And so that could be through podcasts, through posts, devotionals, workshops, keynotes, everything that you have down there. It can also be breakout sessions. It can be reels. It can be email subscriber lists. It can be newsletters. If you have a website, you can have a media page on your website. You can offer free lead magnets with funnels that are going to go there. There are so many different things that you can identify that you can do. And there's so much now that is just out for the picking for creating these things, creative things that people can express themselves in. And I would say for me, I really like to do reels. I really like doing reels. I like having trending audio. I like having a hook on the screen. And then I like to take that and in my caption have a really good devotional, something that's really valuable, really quick and easy that they can grab onto. And then I always have that CTA, that call to action at the end that says, hey, if you loved this and you want more of this, here's where you can get it. So don't ever leave them wondering, how do I get more from this person? How do I hear more? How do I make sure they always have a way to find you? Whatever it is that you're doing, they have to be able to find you.
Yeah. Make yourself easy to find. That's number one. Make
Yes.
yourself easy to remember and easy to find.
If it is hard, if it is complicated, or if they have to work to do it, they're done. They want easy, they want quick, they want to know exactly how to do it. Clickable links, make sure they're clickable, and then make sure that link works. I've had a few times, even myself, that you click on the link and it goes somewhere it's not supposed to go. And that they're done after that. They're like, I ain't working. I'm not going to work for this.
Right.
If I can't find it, it's not there. So make sure your stuff is linked and that the link is correct.
So we're almost out of time. I just want to circle back to something you said at the beginning of this last talk point here. You were mentioning, what did you find helpful to you? And I think that is, if I could say one thing that I would encourage you guys to do, is pay attention to what turns your crank. When you see something and you're like, oh, I loved how they said that, or I loved how they did that. Don't plagiarize it, but use the idea to do it from your own way. I do this all the time. I'll see something, I'll be like, oh, I never thought of that. That's amazing. And I will turn it into my own thing that doesn't look anything like the original thing, but has the same maybe feel or template to it, kind of a pattern. And so just go ahead and follow your heart with that. God created you uniquely because he needs you to be fully you in order to get his work done, right? Okay, so I want to make sure you guys know how to follow up with Jenna. You can go over to her website. When they get over there, what are they going to find?
Well, you're going to find a little bit more about me. So there's an about me section. And if you, looking at me, don't believe that I went through any of the things that I went through, there are plenty of pictures on there that show you that I am telling the truth. So go and look at my about me, but there's also free faith tools. There's a way to share my story, a way to sign up for that newsletter that I send out. And there's just more information about me and what I'm doing. I hope you can tell from my heart that I am very passionate about sharing my story. I know that Marnie, when we were talking, she said, I just see the word spunky. And she goes, I never really heard that before with anyone else, but that's what I feel for you. And I'm like, I love that because that's me. I am a spunky speaker. I like to get in there. I like to share my story in a way that other people can grab onto it and say, man, she loves what she's doing, because I do. So go over there and see what you can find. Sign up and say hi to me. I got all my links on there, and I'd love to say hi to new faith friends.
Awesome. Thank you. And you can also reach out to her at womenspeakers.com if you need a speaker. Jenna, thanks for holding tight to Jesus through your many struggles. Thanks for being such a beautiful trophy of his love here for us today and for sharing this so freely. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. It's been great.
And thanks you guys for joining us. Just love having you with us on these. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.